I watched every Street League final from 2010 through 2024 and logged over 1,200 individual tricks done by the skaters to try and figure out what the most common trick at Street League is. And I did find that answer. I'll come back to that. But the reason I did this was because I thought everyone was going to coalesce around doing the same tricks, and that would give me a really good definition of what a contest trick is. But actually the opposite is happening. Everyone is developing their own special move, and I'm actually thinking it's kind of problematic, to the point where I'd like to propose a new rule for Street League. And I thought that if I could convince you that this rule is necessary, then I could convince an audience that this rule is necessary. So, we're gonna jump in. The future of Street League is at stake here.
It's a lot of weight on these shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. So, buckle up. Let's start really briefly with the current Street League contest format.
Okay.
So, basically what happens is there's a line section. You get 2 attempts at a 45-second line. And then there's a single trick section. And so you get 5 attempts to do a single trick. Now, for this data, I only looked at single tricks done. So I kind of I ignored the lines. We're not talking about the lines for right now.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because if you see the top 4 scores count to your final score, you can take 1 line score, but you don't have to take a line score.
Got it.
So my point being, most of the winning is one on the back of the single trick section. And so that's what I wanted to look at. So SLS did 5 contest stops in 2024, and the average winning score of each of those stops, each of those events, was 36.4. And so to get 36.4, you either need to get 4 9.1 average tricks in your best tricks, or you need to do 1 run and 3 best tricks that also average 9.1. And so my point being, to win these events, you need to be getting 9s or higher. And so the judging really matters. Like, you need to be doing hard tricks, you need to be landing them, and the scores the judges give you need to be good, or else you don't really stand a chance.
Okay.
So let's look at just the last 5 seasons. Okay. There were 25 different events in the last 5 seasons, 25 in total. And so we're gonna start by looking at what was done, right? So there were 401 total tricks landed at Street League finals during this time period. 195 of those were unique tricks.
Yep.
So 195 different tricks, 401 total tricks. 118 of those were landed 1 time.
Okay.
The other 77 were landed multiple times. Of these 77 that were landed more than once, 38 of them were landed more than once, but by the same skater.
Okay.
So one guy did the same trick twice or 3 times or whatever.
Right.
The other 39 tricks were landed by multiple skaters. So trick was landed multiple times and multiple different people did that trick.
Okay.
Of those 39 landed by multiple skaters, 30 of them were landed by exactly 2 different skaters. Skater A and Skater B both did the same trick. 9 of them were landed by more than 2 different skaters. And so if we zoom out at this, of those 195 different tricks that were landed, only 39 were landed by more than 1 different skater.
Right.
So that means, said another way, 4 out of every 5 tricks that are done are exclusive to 1 skater. For 80% of the tricks landed at Street League, there is only 1 skater that is doing that trick.
I believe you, my brain is just not following the math the way the numbers have been laid out. 4 out of 5 tricks are exclusive. That's because only 39 are done by multiple people.
Correct. Only 39 are done by multiple people.
39 out of 195 is 20%.
Is 20%.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly. To flip that, it means 4 out of 5 are exclusive to 1 skater.
This doesn't mean that only 1 skater can do 4 out of 5 tricks. It just means that only 1 skater is successfully competing 4 out of 5 tricks.
Correct.
Okay.
The question then is this a problem? Is it a problem that 80% of the tricks done, only 1 skater is doing? what this is becoming is everyone is just kind of developing their own special moves. Just like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater game. Every pro in that game has their own special moves, and we're now kind of seeing that in real life. Now, on one hand, you could argue, no, it's not a problem. Everybody's getting super good, they're developing in their own lanes, they're innovating, and that is resulting in less and less overlap across skaters because they're getting so good. Now, I think the problem with this is a skate contest is based on comparison. You are trying to figure out who the best skater is and award a winner. And so when all the tricks become apples and oranges because there's no overlap, how are you supposed to determine a winner?
Yeah.
How are you as a judge supposed to compare across those different tricks? Well, you could use stance as the comparative factor, right? Nollie, switch, regular, fakie are the 4 different stances. A nollie heel nose slide is very hard to compare to a cab back tail, but a kickflip crook and a tray flip 50-50, a little bit more doable to compare. They're both regular tricks, they're both flip tricks into grinds. Maybe there's a basis for comparison there.
Okay.
We're encouraged by the data of trick breakdown by stance at Street League. Half of the tricks are regular stance, and then there's pretty even distribution across all of the other stances.
Yeah.
Right? So this should be a pretty good way, you know, maybe they're not doing the same exact tricks, but at least they're skating different stances enough so that there's some overlap. The problem is skaters have specialized stances too. They're not just specializing in specific tricks, but they're also specializing in the stances that they're skating in these contests. There were 42 different skaters that landed tricks in Street League finals in this time period, right?
Okay.
28 of those skaters landed at least 4 tricks. There's 4 stances. You need to have landed 4 tricks to be able to win an event anyway. So we're gonna filter this down to these 28 guys that have landed at least 4. Out of them, 15, so over half, did at least 75% of their tricks from the same stance. The vast majority of the tricks that they landed from the same stance. Over a third of them did all of their tricks from one stance. If we look specifically at just the winners of these events, the trend is still the same. So 13 different skaters won one of these events in this time period. 7 of them, just over half, did at least 75% of their tricks from one stance, and 5, over a third, did all of their tricks from one stance. So again, we're getting less and less overlap with the specific tricks that skaters are doing, but we're also not really getting much overlap in the stances that they're skating because they've all started to specialize in different areas. Let's look at the impact of what's going on, right?
Okay.
There were 25 events in this time period.
Okay.
14 of those events were won where 100% of the tricks were done from the same stance.
Okay.
Let's look at a couple people who won once during this time period. Kairi Netsuke won the Apex 3 event, and he did heel flip back lip, heel flip back tail, heel flip front blunt, and 180 late shove, right? Those are the only 4 tricks he's ever landed at Street League. All of them were done from regular stance, and 3 out of 4 of them were a heel flip in. Next, you had Aurelien Giraud, who won in Paris. He did hard flip 180, hard flip nose grind, and a back 360 kickflip. He's landed 7 total tricks in his SLS career. Again, all of them are from the regular stance, and 3 out of 4 of them had a hard flip involved. And then you've got Braden Hoban. He won in San Diego, kickflip crook, kickflip nose grind, and an impossible. And out of the 15 tricks he's landed in his career, again, 100% of them are from the regular stance. 11 of those 15 were a kickflip into something, and then the other 4 all were an impossible or an impossible into something. So again, not only do you have the fact that they're specializing in heel flip ins, hard flip ins, and kick flip ins, they're only skating the regular stance. So how are you supposed to compare these guys to everyone else in the competition who is not doing heel flip ins, or hard flip ins, or kick flip ins?
You should make it like diving.
Hold that thought. Another one-time winner in this time period, Giovanni Vianna. He won with a cab front nose, cab front blunt, and fakie front 180 to back Smith, which is a crazy, crazy trick. He's done 20 different tricks in his SLS career. All of them are fakie. And 70% of those start with a full cab into something, which is like a fakie 360.
Wouldn't you argue that his are more complicated then?
How do you judge? He's not showing you that he can flip into the same tricks the other people are, and the other people aren't showing that they can fakie spin into the tricks he's doing. There's no overlap. How do you know what's harder? That's the whole problem.
I see.
Kelvin Hoefler, I think this is the most egregious example of winning like this. He did half cab nose slide to back tail, half cab back Smith back 180, half cab back nose grind 180, and cab back tail, which individually are all crazy tricks, especially down a large hubba. However, if you zoom out a little bit, really what he is doing is a full cab with a hubba in the middle 4 different times to win a contest. In a contest where Ryan DeCenzo is flipping in nollie, flipping out switch, and doing front shove nose grind, I don't think you should be able to do 4 full cabs and win the contest. He's been around Street League for a bunch. He's landed 50 tricks. He's not the biggest culprit of this trend. 54% were done from fakie stance over his career and 42% from regular stance.
Yeah.
So he mixes it up more than some of these guys we've talked about, but still, you shouldn't be able to win an event by doing 4 full cabs. Let's look now at a couple people who have won multiple times during this time period. Dashawn Jordan won the unsanctioned event in 2020. He did tray flip 50, front 270 lip, and a laser flip. He also won unsanctioned 3, front 270 lip, tray flip 50-50, bigger flip front board, and a laser flip. If you notice, he is doing the same tricks. That's his strategy. 32 tricks in his career he's landed at Street League finals. 91% of them are done from the regular stance. And if we are including bigger flip front boards, which some people call them tray flip front boards, 50% of his tricks involve a 360 flip. So half of his tricks he's tray flipping into something. Gustavo Ribeiro, he also has won multiple stops in this time period. He won Salt Lake City in 2021, he won Vegas in 22, and he won Rio de Janeiro in 2022. He also uses a similar model where he does bigger flip front board in virtually every contest, and then we'll do nose grind nollie flip or sometimes crook nollie flip, and then he does tray flip nose blunt as well, or tray flip nose grind, as you see. So he runs out the same tricks.
I have a question. In 2021, why'd he do 2 360 flip front side? It's nose grind and nose blunt. I didn't see that.
But that's part of the problem, right? It's not basically the same thing. They are very, very, very similar. And how do you score that? When some guy is doing, if some guy is doing a nollie trick, and then a fakie trick, and then a switch trick, and this guy's doing tray flip nose grind, and then tray flip nose blunt, and then, like, how do you score that?
At the risk of taking the wind out of your sails, each trick should have a degree of difficulty.
That's too much. That's too far. But
No.
we gotta start small. We gotta start small. Okay. If we look at this in total, Gustavo's landed 37 tricks in his career. 100% of them are from the regular stance, and almost 60% involve a tray flip, again, including the bigger flip front boards there. Even Yuto is not free from this trend. He won LA by doing 2 nollie tricks. He won in Seattle by also doing 2 nollie tricks. And then he won in 2024, the Apex event, by also doing nollie tricks. He does nollie 270, nollie backside 270 nose slide in pretty much every contest, especially ones that he wins. And he has landed 36 tricks in his career, 78% of them done nollie, and 50% of them with a nollie 270. Granted, he mixes up the nollie 270, he does nollie front 270 and nollie back 270, but still, he is the only one doing nollie 270s either direction into things. Even Nyjah, the king of Street League, has been guilty of this in the past 5 years. Kind of super guilty on this one. He's not just doing nollie ins, but he's doing specifically nollie heel flips into both of these. But let's zoom back out. We're going to go into Nyjah in a second, but we're going to zoom back out because we were talking about, of the 25 events, these 14 where all of the tricks were done from the same stance. We just went through all of those events. And so, again, the problem is that there's nothing to compare. How do you compare somebody who's only skating one direction to somebody else who is only skating a different direction? or to a third guy who's skating multiple directions, but maybe not doing quite as hard of tricks. Like, how do you judge that? So I'd like to propose a new rule. The current format, and I would like to add that your best trick scores used for your total score must represent 2 different stances, at least. Now, what this would do is it would require you to skate more than 1 stance.
Yeah.
Those 14 events we just went through, you wouldn't be allowed to do that because you would have had to skate multiple stances. And what I think this does is this is going to promote more comparative overlap across the competition pool, which in a event based on comparison, I think will help. It will help the judges. And so what this impact will do is it will disqualify all of these 14 winners who didn't mix up their trick selection. And if we look at like all the wins from the last 20 or last 5 years, what this would do is it would change the leaderboard actually quite a bit.
Gustavo's gone.
Yeah, Nyjah and Yuto both get trimmed down a little bit, but they do have wins that still stand. Gustavo, Dashawn are multi-time winners that would be eliminated. Sora has no violations because he mixes it up a bit.
Way to go, Sora.
And then you've got a couple of other single winners who would stay on the board here.
Yeah.
And now, at least, we're not comparing apples to oranges. We're comparing apples to other apples.
We're comparing much larger apples to much larger apples.
The problem is that these skaters are getting more technical, they're getting more niche with their bag of tricks, and there's fewer and fewer overlap across this pool of skaters. And so with fewer points of comparison, the judges are left to compare apples and oranges and are going to inherently make their judging decisions more biased based on personal preference. When you have less to compare to, you are having to now fill in some of those gaps, and you will do that with your own personal bias. This trick is way harder for me, and since nobody else is doing it, I'm going to judge it really well because I think it's really hard. But if somebody else was doing it, that totally changes the perspective you may have as a judge. So, I said we'd go back to Nyjah's stats and numbers. Nyjah has landed 176 tricks in his Street League career.
Sheesh.
51% are done from the regular stance, and actually 14% of all Street League tricks are Nyjah's tricks. And it's because he's been there the whole time. Like, he was in the inaugural season, and he won the most recent event from the most recent season. So he's just been around forever. His career mix of Street League, and
this reflects the overall trend.
This is part of the problem. This is, I think, the biggest reason to not implement the rule I proposed yet. The reason is you would be giving Street League's historically winningest skater, who is still in his prime, an advantage because this rule wouldn't bother him at all. His mix of tricks is very healthy. It actually mirrors almost perfectly the average over the last 5 years. Now, if you look specifically, this is Nyjah's career mix.
Yeah.
If you look specifically at the last 5 years, he actually has done way fewer regular tricks in the last 5 years. But still, my point is, based on this distribution here, he would be totally unbothered by this rule. Somebody like Gustavo, who has never done a trick that isn't regular stance, this rule is going to be a problem. For Nyjah, he basically doesn't need to do anything differently, and I think you could argue that will actually make the competition a little less healthy, giving the winningest skater somewhat of an advantage over the competition pool.
But I disagree. I mean, it's not his fault that he's been skating in a way that he's doing more stances. I agree it would be problematic to add this and then Nyjah's reign continues, but like the whole point of adding it is to make everyone else better at skating.
I would say I would add to that, better at skating maybe, but make the competition more competitive.
Yeah.
That would be my goal.
I think it's net positive, and I mean, everyone has their feelings about Nyjah anyway. Like, buck up and learn some new tricks, people.
So, there is a precedent for this type of rule, and you touched on it earlier.
That's you.
Springboard diving competition. That is a photo of me. So in springboard diving competition, you have to compete 6 different dives from 5 categories. And so in diving, the categories are very, very similar to stances. In diving, you've got front and back. You've got reverse, which is where you are jumping off forwards but flipping backwards. Inward, where you're jumping off backwards but flipping forwards. And then anything with a twist. And so in a dive meet, you have to do one dive from each of the 5 categories, and then you can do a 6th one from a category of your choosing. And so I'm not saying that the Street League rule needs to go this far yet. In fact, I think if they went this far, it would be problematic. But I think that they do need to require that people are using at least 2 different stances to prevent the tricks from just getting so spread apart that there's really no overlap anymore. And I think this will push, if it doesn't push the tricks back together a bit, it will at least push them to be skating the same stances, which is at least a little easier to compare as a judge. The last thing I'll mention is, okay, well, what about the women's side? Do the women need a rule like this? And while on the men's side, I think this makes the men's competition more competitive, I think right now it would actually hurt the women's competition. They don't have an issue where there's not enough overlap. In fact, if you watch a women's contest, you know, half of them are going to backsmith the rail. Half of them are going to front feeble the rail. They are all already kind of doing the same tricks or similar tricks. And so I think a rule like this right now, it would give like specifically 3 of them a huge advantage because almost all of them are not skating multiple stances yet. I'm sure they can figure it out, but I just don't think it's necessary right now.
Yeah, interesting.
It would also really impact, right now they skate the same courses, and if you're going to require that they...
It would impact what they can do on those, yeah.
Yeah, like they're not going to do fakey tricks on the biggest section, at least not yet. And so, with that, that is my proposal.
Ew.
What do you think?
I hate that graphic, choice.
Do we need the rule?
I think so.
All right. All right. Let's see what the audience thinks now.
I mean, why wouldn't you need the rule?
That means I've done a great job convincing you, and you don't even know what I'm talking about half the time.
Right, so that doesn't mean you've done a great job convincing me. It just means you have a lot of free time on your hands.
It means I am comfortable publishing this to get the opinion of the masses.
You're a huge nerd. Like, 1,200? I mean, I've been watching you. Like,
it didn't take that long.
Feels like it took a while.
Hey, AAA at it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have to imagine you got a lot of other interesting data and insights from doing this.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I mentioned the reason I did this was to figure out what the most common tricks at Street League were, and I did find that information out. And if you want to go watch that video, that's going to be up on Patreon, where I actually attempt all of the top 5 grinds and slides and the top 5 flip tricks down gaps. I did learn at least one new trick in trying this, so that's exciting. But if you want to go see what those tricks are, that video is on Patreon. We have a free 7-day trial membership, so you can sign up and watch it and then cancel that if you don't want to pay us. But if you do want to support us, you can stick around. There's other stuff going on Patreon. So there's my plug there. If you are curious in more Street League trick data, we've got it.
And if you'd like to hang out with Ryan and talk about skateboarding with him so I don't have to as much, comment below.
Trying to pawn me off, okay.
A little bit, like...
All right.
This is crazy.
Okay, well, cheers, Em.
Cheers.
Great job. Great listening.
Hey, you. Sweaty hands. Great job.
I'm
what a nice
nervous
presentation. Good job.
Okay, chill.